And welcome back to the Cooler Jets podcast. We're hosts Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Well, Michael, we're here on Friday. We haven't had a podcast this week. Apologies for that. So a lot to break down in this one, a big game for the Jets. I'll be honest, after Sunday night, I was feeling a lot less optimistic about the Jets' chances of making the playoffs after falling to 4-5, yet another anemic offensive performance. The Jets collapsing on primetime football, losing back-to-back games, and then looking at a stretch here of two really hard divisional games against the Bills and Dolphins, then two tough games against the Texans and Falcons. Texans are looking great at this point, and then back against the Dolphins. And so all this buzz about is Rodgers going to return in the middle of December kind of felt, I'll be honest, for a couple of days, like, doesn't matter. Are the Jets even, do they have it in them to win a couple of these games and keep themselves alive? But I'm not giving up on a season, Michael. They're 4-5. Crazy things happen. This team has proved that they can hang with anybody. They can also lose to anybody. And they've had the Bills' number this season and the last few times they played Josh Allen. So a big game this Sunday for the Jets to get back on track, get back to 500, and keep their season alive heading into that massive Black Friday game. So with all that said, how are you doing? Have you recovered from your trip to Vegas? I know you weren't on the last podcast, but you spent a whole week in the worst city in America. So are you doing all right?
I'm doing good. I mean, Vegas was quite the experience, both in terms of the trip itself and the game that both you and I were witnesses to. But yeah, I think I'm ready to talk about this whole debacle. There's a lot to get into, and some of these topics might be pretty redundant with what we've been saying throughout the entire season. It feels like every week it's the same story. Like, I'm starting to get writer's block trying to write articles because it's like, what more can you say every week than Jets offense bad, Jets defense good? It's kind of been the same thing since week one this season. But nonetheless, there's always some details to get into. Looks like we're getting some changes offensively at long last. So plenty to get into. But I mean, Vegas was, to quickly talk about that, I agree.
Overrated.
I mean, overrated. I wouldn't go so far as to say worst city in America. I haven't been to every city in America yet, so I don't want to put that label on it. But I would say it's largely overrated unless you're into the things that Vegas brings to the table. In other words, losing money. I don't think it's your type of city, which I'm not a huge gambler. I mean, I did put a couple bets on this Jets game. All of them were pro-Jets.
How did they not award my Bryce Huff? I had a Bryce Huff bet. Put $20 on him having over.
I did
basically
see that.
To have a half sack.
I feel like he should have got it. Franco Myers started the sack, but Huff got in on it. So I think you got robbed there. But I started to wonder whether these bets are legitimate. There was one Knicks parlay I put that had 5 parts to it, and I hit 4 of them. I just needed R.J. Barrett to score a couple fewer points. I, for some reason, picked the under on him, but he's having a great season. I shouldn't do that again.
Took the over on Randall. Come on.
Would have hit big on that one, but sports betting is rigged. Vegas is
Speaking of rigged, can we just acknowledge that Robert Saleh definitely called that timeout with 19 seconds? I was watching him the entire time because I was screaming timeout. I was looking at him. Screaming timeout running down the sideline. Not to jump ahead. I know there's a lot to talk about in that game, but they've just been getting hosed all season. That's not the reason they lost. I'm just sorry. You mentioned getting rigged, and I just couldn't wait. We didn't do the podcast right afterwards. Apologies for that. We both just the logistics of getting out of Vegas, and then just some other stuff this week. But we are here now, so let's we'll take 30 minutes or so, break down the Raiders, and then we'll talk about this Bills game. So it's probably an hour and a half pod. The people like the long pods, or so they say. I don't know where you want to start, though. I mean, I guess you were talking about Vegas. The one thing I will say is I didn't know it was a thing until I actually went to a game. But that stupid Raiders chant, and anybody who went to the game knows what I'm talking about, or anybody who's been to a Raiders, I'd never heard of it. But that stupid Raiders chant that they just do the entire game.
Yeah,
and
me neither. I never heard of that.
Not until I was in line to go in the stadium, and people just started doing it. I guess that's what it would be like to be an away fan of the Jets game, but at least we have some sophistication.
I just feel like that's more iconic. Like, I think everyone knows that's the Jets chant. But I also went to a Browns game in 2016, and I didn't know about their here we go, Brownies. Here we go. Like, they got that chant.
So original at every sports game.
I'd never heard of that until I went.
Do they also do the defense
I think it just proves how good the Jets chant is. Like, I think every fan base, even if you're not a football fan, I feel like you hear Jets, you think of that chant. But I never even heard of these chants until I go to these games. So other fan bases got to step it up.
I wasn't even. I mean, I'll admit my heart sank when Zach Wilson threw that interception, but I was fine. I was like, all right, the stadium's cool, city's overrated, but whatever. I was fine, but I made the ill-fated decision to wear my Zach Wilson jersey because I was looking at it. I was like, well, I don't know how many more times I'm going to wear this jersey. Might as well get my money's worth. And Jesus Christ, the chirps I was getting leaving that stadium. I think I got chirped at like 7 or 8 times walking out of that stadium. And I think I just thought it was going to be an Oakland thing. Like I would never see a game at the Black Hole. Just doesn't seem like that and Philly probably the two places I would never go to. But I was like, Vegas, that's, there's a lot of Jets fans here, but holy shit. The Irish started to come out leaving that stadium. But we kept it cool. We made it here. This is not a black guy. This is just a long story, but we're fine.
Yeah, my section was like I was behind the Jets.
You're
fans,
entirely Jets fans.
It was like more. It's definitely more than half Jets fans around me. I mean, there was Jets fans on both sides of me, in front of me, probably like 65%. So I mean, it was ready to explode if the Jets scored. I mean, you could hear some Jets chants breaking out even through the broadcast when I rewatched it.
I couldn't hear it over the blacked out drunk guy behind me screaming Raider the entire game. Literally,
I had a really annoying guy in front of me, but in a more subtle way. Like anytime the Raiders did something, he would stand up, turn around, face me and my brother and my dad, and he would just like stare at us and do like a slow motion first down point and like clap, like high five his Raider fans.
I don't think I can handle going to away games anymore.
That's really
I've only done it a couple times, but
it's high risk, high reward. If you lose a road game, it's humiliating. But if you win, I mean that's a good feeling. Like I saw the Knicks close out against the Cavs in Cleveland this year, and that is very cool to go in another team's stadium and win.
Yeah, but then I feel like when I go to see the Jets at MetLife, I'm always surrounded by away fans. So I just can't get away from the obnoxious away fans. I exhibited model away fan behavior at this game. I was not screaming I mean, I guess I was making some noise, but like I wasn't obnoxious. The only time I think I did get obnoxious is when they didn't call the timeout, when they didn't give the Jets the timeout. It's the only time I really took it to an 11. Outside of that, Michael, I don't know what to call this game. I mean, I almost call it a fun game because the Jets at least move the ball, but Jesus Christ, they can't get in the end zone. I mean, this is ridiculous that they haven't had a single touchdown drive since that Chiefs game. Just one play touchdowns, and then they haven't had a single touchdown since that Giants game, since that Breeze. What is it, 11 quarters? 11 quarters since their last touchdown?
Yeah.
So it's been ugly on offense. I thought Zach Wilson played well in this game, and people are going to roll their eyes, but go back and watch the all-22 of this game for Zach. And I'm not saying that I've tweeted this like I think 20 times. I'm not saying he's a good quarterback. Like he's clearly not a plus quarterback at this point, but you can't watch this Jets offense and tell me he's the biggest problem with it. I'm sorry. And that's not to say that he won't look like shit against the Bills this week. Like that's the one thing you don't know with Zach is he's inconsistent. But specifically in this Raiders game, I felt like he played some of his best football. The problem with Zach, though, and I was saying this to you beforehand, is it just seems like he just can't put together 60 minutes. He just, even when he has like a good game, like going back to that Titans game his rookie year, what did he have? Like it was like a third down and overtime. He like ran out of bounds. You know what I'm talking about? Or like the Bucs game his rookie year where he did the QB sneak. He called his own number and it failed and it blew up in his face. The Chiefs game this year, he fumbles the ball. There's a number of examples. But even when he's at his best, he just can't help himself but have the backbreaking mistake because his interception was brutal. The interception was terrible. It was a great drive. I felt like the Jets were going to win that game. And let's just be honest, he had to hit Brees there on the flat. And even if he read the other side, I think it was Garrett Wilson was wide open as well. It could have been Gibson on the other side. But the pick aside, I felt like he played about as good as he's played all season besides that Chiefs game. In fact, I think you could put it up there with the Chiefs game. He just didn't have the touchdowns. But some of the eye-popping wow throws that you drafted him for, you saw, even on some of the incompletions like the Hail Mary, which was so close. But what did you make of Zach Wilson's performance? We'll get into the rest of the offense, some of the changes that they're going to be making this week, and talking about the Bills game. But let's just take 10 minutes or so and talk about Zach Wilson from this Raiders game. Did you walk away feeling good about him, or did you walk away feeling like yet again he's part of the problem?
Yeah, I think he was fine. There were some plays that you put on him, but I mean overall, I really think this is another game where you got a decent backup quarterback performance, and you got all the good and bad that comes with that for Zach Wilson, which is some plays where he's missing an opportunity because that's who he is, but there are also plenty of plays, negative plays by the offense that were not his fault. I think it really just puzzles me how people can watch these games and come away thinking Zach Wilson is single-handedly holding the offense back to the point where if you put Trevor Siemian or Tim Boyle in there, things are going to be different. Like, yes, if they had Aaron Rodgers, this would be much, much different. I don't know if they'd be good, considering the offensive line and all the receivers, the
a lot
tight ends,
better.
all the issues. But they would be a lot better. It'd probably be an average NFL offense.
But can I just make something clear? Not just because of the simple on-field. I mean, obviously that would be an upgrade. It would be what he would do at the line of scrimmage. Because how many plays
right.
during a single game that Hackett's calling, how many plays is Aaron Rodgers running exactly how Hackett calls it? Not many.
Right.
And how many is Zach Wilson running? The vast majority. That's the big difference. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
But yeah, that's a good point, because there are definitely plays when you look on film that are bad Hackett play calls. But I feel like when he was working with Rodgers in Green Bay, there was that flexibility to where, Rodgers is changing the play most of the time, so you don't see as much of Hackett's issues with play design because Rodgers is covering that up. But now you don't have a quarterback who can do that, and now Hackett's getting exposed more often, as we've seen in pretty much every single season he's had without Rodgers. So, yeah, for sure they'd be a lot better with Aaron Rodgers. I think they should have signed a better backup quarterback in the offseason. That is a legitimate criticism I think people should be talking about, is that they should have, if you want to stick it out with Zach and develop him, there should have been a clear redshirt year. You should have gotten a high-level backup like a Gardner Minshew, or bring back Mike White. You could argue I think he's better than Zach Wilson. Whoever it is, Jacoby Brissett, you should have got that. Even Josh Dobbs, I mean, with the way he's playing right now, I know he wasn't valued this way in the offseason, but a little revisionist. But
how do the Chiefs? How do the Chiefs look?
You could have signed a higher level backup.
How do the Chiefs look if Mahomes goes down and Blaine Gabbert plays?
There are better backups than Zach Wilson. That's still the point.
I know, but I'm just saying that
the guys I mentioned are better than
I think the QB room of Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson, and Trevor Siemian isn't. I don't know. I get people are beating up on him because, I guess they could have upgraded the backup, but I get why they didn't.
Just the point I'm saying, if you want to make a quarterback criticism, I think you could have gotten a better backup. But at this point, I don't think there's any point in saying that if they bench Zach Wilson, things are going to be better. The way Zach Wilson is playing, Trevor Siemian is not better than him. They're very similar level. I mean, there's not a lot of demand for Trevor Siemian in the league. Why do you think he was still available in the middle of the season? And the team doesn't even want to put him over Tim Boyle. Not that we should trust their decision-making with offense.
How much of that do you think is just because once they make that move, the chance to bench Zach get a lot louder? Because as long as Tim Boyle's QB2 and Zach Wilson stinks it up at MetLife, not saying that he will, but let's say they get to that Black Friday game, he's looking like shit. I'm sure the Tim Boyle chance would start, but if you get that notification that like we've elevated Trevor Siemian for this game, don't you think that puts a lot of pressure on, or at least the outside
pressure,
right,
on Zach Wilson?
But maybe they should, because he's clearly a more reliable option. No offense. I mean, we had Tim on the podcast. I liked him, but like you do feel better whether or not it's pulling Zach or if Zach goes down, that Trevor Siemian could come in and lead the offense. I guess Boyle's been in the offense for longer, but at this point, Siemian's been in it for what, 10 weeks? I mean, 9 weeks, something like that. I mean, he's had enough time. Do you want to talk about some of the plays specifically that you felt he did well, and then some of the plays that we feel like he obviously the obvious one's the interception. Let's talk about the interception, because I think that's the defining play of the game. How do you feel about it? I mean, obviously bad read and bad throw, but you had an interesting take. You don't feel like it's entirely on him?
I still think it's bad. I do think it's mostly on him. I just feel like in general, Allen Lazard doesn't do a great job of coming back to the ball, and he could have made a better effort to come back to that, and at least that would have made it contested, probably broke it up. But as usual, he just stands there and waits for the ball to come. And there was some pressure allowed by Newman, but yeah, it was a bad play. I think he assumed Lazard was going to come open, which he did. The linebacker over there followed Brees into the flat. Lazard came behind him, but he just stared at it the whole way. He never accounted for the linebacker in the middle, who just followed his eyes and broke on it. And they kind of ran the same exact concept a few plays earlier. So I think, and in that situation, Lazard was open. I forget if it was Lazard or someone else who ran the route, but regardless, it was open because the linebacker kind of hung tight in the middle, didn't really break on it the same way. But this time, he was ready for it. So, yeah, definitely a bad interception for sure. And like you said, it's that's one of the biggest problems with Zach Wilson's career. He hasn't, other than the Steelers game, he really hasn't been able to have those signature game-sealing drives.
And he was bad in that game for 2 quarters. So
yeah, kind of his own hole that he was digging himself out of. But it's just in terms of closing games, being able to make plays when you need them at the end, it pretty consistently has been an issue. And he's had opportunities to make those plays, and he has been able to do it. And I guess you give him credit for the Giants game a couple weeks ago, but again, it's a game where you had 6 points, and it's the only reason you needed to make that comeback. But yeah, I do agree for the most part. It was another fine game, and when you look at the film, I see at least 3 more reasons beyond him that are worse, and that's not to say he was good or didn't have bad plays, but it's just, I think I don't see many plays where I picture, all right, if Trevor Siemian or Tim Boyle's in there, they're making that play. The Jets are winning this game. Like, some people in the media come out and say things like that, and I just don't think they're watching the games closely enough.
No.
So,
You think Connor
in
Hughes
terms
is
of
watching
good
the
plays,
L22?
no, absolutely not. 0%.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think.
But the one play that would make the difference is the interception. That is the one play I think Trevor Siemian does dump it off to Breece Hall, and so.
But he also doesn't make.
He doesn't get them down
the
there with
throw
that jump
to Tyler Conklin later that gives the Jets a chance. One of Zach's best throws in this game was incomplete. The deep bomb he threw to Garrett Wilson down the left sideline was absolutely perfect between 2 players and dropped right in there, and Garrett Wilson didn't catch it. Tough catch. It was contested, but could not have been thrown better. And Garrett Wilson has caught, in this game, he caught much more difficult passes than that. So that was a great throw. The one he made to Lazard, the no-look going to his right, Lazard trying to catch it like it's a bar of soap, as you said. He had a lot of really money plays in this game. And
the Hail Mary?
The Hail Mary was a great effort to give him a chance. So, I mean, he's not good. I'm never going to claim he's good. He's not one of the 30 best quarterbacks in the league, probably. But as far as backups go, I think he's doing an average job. And there's no reason to feel, confident that Trevor Siemian or Tim Boyle is going to be better than that. So until I see a game like the New England game in week 3, where there are open throws all over the field and Zach Wilson just blowing play after play, until I see that again, I don't feel like changing the quarterback is worthwhile or going to do anything. And I'd rather stick with Zach and the upside he brings and keep betting on some of the improvements that he's made this season, because regardless of the stats, I think everyone can agree watching him, he's more consistent with his accuracy, not taking as many stupid sacks, just stupid plays in general, have decreased a little bit. And again, just to be clear, we're not saying he's good. He's just less.
All right, we don't have to keep giving the caveats. They get it. We know we're not calling him Patrick.
Just want to put it out there because people don't listen to the caveats sometimes. You say one thing that isn't Zach Wilson is the worst quarterback I've ever seen, and now all of a sudden you're a Zach defender and you want to vote for him for president. You're a Zach truther. So you do got to put the caveats in there. But until I see a game like that where he's clearly costing them consistently, like he's put in a good position to make things happen, and he's blowing it, I don't think a quarterback change is worthwhile. And that's the difference between this year versus last year. Because last year, that's what he was putting on film, even in games where they won. It was like guys are open and he's not seeing them, or his throws are poor, or he's taking sacks he shouldn't take, plays that are directly on him. And there are still some of those this year, but a lot of the struggles is just people aren't open. The offensive line is absolutely terrible. Nathaniel Hackett is calling terrible concepts that get nobody open. I see a lot of plays that aren't on the quarterback. So for now, I'm okay with Zach Wilson.
The one thing I'll say, and we've been saying this in the podcast the last few weeks, is that they have to kind of change their philosophy. The Jets are basically calling offense within a 15-yard box week in and week out, which doesn't help the run game. I don't think it helps Zach Wilson. I don't think you've mentioned how they're kind of misusing this defense. They're trying to play it safe. They don't want to mess the game up. We've said all that. The one thing I don't think we have said is, like, if that's going to be your philosophy, then maybe Zach Wilson isn't the right quarterback. That's not. I think they should play Zach Wilson and play aggressively, because I think part of the benefit to having this guy is like, okay, his floor has raised enough. His accuracy isn't as terrible as it was last year that he can operate an offense. But the thing that Zach Wilson is going to give you is the ceiling to an offense to make 2 or 3 wild throws a game. And he might have 2 or 3 shit throws a game, but those 2 or 3 wild throws might put up 14 points, and that's enough to elevate the offense and enough to make up for any mistakes they might make. But if you're going to call the game so conservatively and try to win games off your defense, which you don't have the offensive line or the running game to do that, that is the route where you'd go with the Trevor Siemian or a backup quarterback or just a low ceiling, high floor vet to just run the offense. And just, if you want to get in field goal fest, so maybe have 1 or 2 touchdown drives. I know they're not even getting one touchdown drive a game. But like, do you what I get what I'm saying? Like, the benefit to Zach is the potential ceiling he could add to your offense. And I don't think you're going to get that. Like, how many times have we seen through his entire career, going back to his first ever game, that once it gets to the point in the fourth quarter where the Jets are either down 2 scores or it's at the end and the threat of making a mistake isn't really there, you see him at his best. I mean, that Panthers game, shit. I mean, even the Patriots game this year, which they sucked, but once they started throwing on first down and the Jets were down and they had to throw, but you saw it at the end of this game. You saw it at the end of the Giants game when there was only 24 seconds left. You saw it at the end of the Steelers game his second year. I mean, you get the point. The only times we've seen Zach Wilson look like anything close to what the Jets have drafted is when he's playing aggressively, he's letting it fly, he's not worried about making the mistake, and they're throwing downfield. And the Jets, for whatever reason, unless they're in that 2-minute situation at the end of the game, they're down 9 points and it's just a no-win situation. They just have to go for it. Unless they're in that situation, they call the game so conservatively. And I think it's what really cost them in this Raiders game, because they had the lead. For one of the first times this entire season, they played with the lead. They were up 9-3, then they were up 9-6, but they had those couple of drives, which granted were destroyed by penalties, where they had bad field position, but they reverted into their own shell. They didn't start playing aggressive. I think they had one deep throw to Malik Taylor, and then they had the one deep throw to Garrett Wilson you're mentioning. 2 deep throws this entire game on a Raiders defense that has been susceptible to double moves all season long, has not been good, and was missing their top corner because of Meek Robertson. So I don't know what you think about. I know we've talked about the philosophy of this offense in the last few podcasts, how we want them to kind of emulate the 2019 Titans in terms of run the ball, give the ball to Brees plenty of times, run behind Becton and Tippmann. You have some run blockers up front, but then open up that play action game and throw downfield. Stop playing offense within this 10, 15-yard box. If that's the type of offense you want to run, it sucks. But then, okay, yeah, maybe then go for the higher floor veteran quarterback. But as long as you're going to play Zach Wilson, might as well try to play to his strengths. I don't know how you feel about all that.
Yeah, I agree. And the last thing you said, I think, is the most important point, because that's what Zach Wilson brings to the table that most other backup quarterbacks don't. Because most backup quarterbacks in this league are, guys who had their chances, young quarterbacks. We found out they're not great, so they settle into that backup role because they don't bring a ceiling to the table. And that's why they're not starting quarterbacks, because every team is after that high ceiling guy. But Zach Wilson is this rare backup quarterback who's only in his third year, is a young guy, and has the talent of a second overall pick. So he brings that ceiling to the table. But obviously he has a floor as well. But the Jets are playing scared, safe football, and they're still going to a very low floor offensively. It doesn't matter that they're playing conservatively. They're still extremely bad playing that way. So there isn't any upside to playing this safe style football that Hackett is calling. So they might as well throw caution to the wind and start being a more aggressive team. And that's not even to say, throw the ball every single play, never run the ball, throw 20 deep bombs a game. Yeah. There are very specific ways where the Jets are clearly not playing to the strengths of their own team. Play action is a great place to start. Zach Wilson has pretty league average numbers as a play action passer this year. 8.5 yards per attempt. That's 17th in the league. His passer rating is 103. That's 16th in the league. So his his play action numbers are middle of the pack, but his non-play action numbers are way near the bottom of the league. And there aren't a lot of guys in the league that have the same disparity that he does in terms of play action and not play action. He's the 8th largest difference in his yards per attempt and the 4th largest difference in his passer rating, play action versus non-play action. So you would think that means let's do a lot of play action. Clearly he's better when we use it. But no, he's 27th in play action rate, only 17% of his, or 17.8% of his plays. So about 1 in every 5 passing plays is play action. So just do more of that. That's a very simple fix. Throw some more play action in there instead of straight up dropbacks. And I know the Jets aren't running the ball well, but there have been a lot of studies done that prove you don't need to run the ball well to do play action effectively. It's just
to freeze the second level of the defense.
Right. Exactly.
Just to draw those linebackers in for half a second.
It doesn't matter if every run you had is for a stuff. They're still going to react to it the same way. So I don't want to hear that answer from them that, we want to run the ball, set it up first, then we do play action. No, you don't. You can do play action every play of the game if you want to, and it'll work the same way. Maybe that's
sometimes it even works too because the defense is getting after the run game so much that they start to get so aggressive at filling the holes
Yeah,
and trying
that's
to
a
get
good
those
point
tackles
too.
for
They could get
losses.
greedy and think like, I'm gonna, pad my stats here and keep getting some stuff. It's like, okay, well, come on in and think you could go ahead and think you could do that. And there are specific plays. This is more than just like a hypothetical thing. There are specific plays you can look at where it's like you would have had a good play there if you did play action, but you didn't. And you can look at this Raiders game, and this leads me to another issue that I think plays into this lack of aggressiveness, which is Hackett's tendency to overload on consecutive runs. And they don't run the ball too much overall. I mean, they're I think 30th in rushing attempts per game. So it's not like they're, super stubborn with the run, which is mostly because they're trailing from the entirety of every single game. But it's the consecutive runs in spots where I think they could throw in a play action, especially when it's second and short. There was a sequence in the Raiders game where Cook had a 10-yard run on first down to move the chains. He had a 9-yard run on the next play. Now you're in second and 1, and there you go. You got your great run plays to demand respect from the defense, and they run it again. It gets stuffed. You're on 3rd and 1. Run again, stuffed again, and then they punt. So, but if you look at that 2nd and 1 play after the 2 consecutive positive Cook runs, the defense bit so hard in that. There were 8 guys near the line of scrimmage. They all stepped down, and if you freeze it at the point right before the handoff is taken by Cook, the middle of the field is wide open. It would have been a perfect spot to call play action. But too many times in those second and short situations, the Jets are just running the ball to try to get a free first down instead of taking advantage of the fact that, okay, if we throw the ball here and don't get it, we're still 3rd and 1. We can still get that. But this is a great opportunity to give our quarterback an advantageous position instead of only letting him throw when, all right, you're 3rd and long. All right, Zach, drop back and throw us out of this, which is when you can't use play action. That's another reason he doesn't get enough play action is because they don't take those situations where it's in play. Then you get to 3rd and long, you can't use play action because then it's a complete non-threat to run the ball. So those second downs, they got to do more play action shots out of that. I think that's a very specific thing you could look at and say the Jets can be more aggressive and play more to the strengths of Zach Wilson, to the strengths of this offense, and give themselves a better chance to be explosive. So there are very specific things you can look at where the Jets can be more aggressive that goes beyond just like air it out, be more aggressive, throw more bombs, and simple things like that. There are things here that make no sense that the Jets are doing. And one more thing I'll throw in on top of that: pre-snap motion.
Yeah.
Dan Orlovsky had a really good tweet where he pointed out 3 things that he thinks are essential for all the top offenses in the NFL, and pre-snap motion was one of them. In addition to play action and personnel and formation flexibility, those were the 3. But pre-snap motion is a big one, and the Jets are 29th in the league at 35%. The league average is 52%. And, so it's not a necessity for every great offense. Like the Eagles are near the bottom, even lower than the Jets. But it does tend pretty heavily that the highest motion teams are the best teams. Each of the top 6 teams in pre-snap motion are top half offenses in terms of DVOA. And then 8 of the bottom 10 teams in motion are below average offenses in terms of DVOA. Obviously, the Jets are included in that.
We said the same thing about Gase.
Yeah,
the same thing about Gase.
There's a lot of parallels between these two.
And you want to know why? You want to know why? It's because
crazy,
both Peyton Manning and both Aaron Rodgers, who are Hall of Fame quarterbacks, like to get to the line and read the defense and play from a static offense. But when you're with Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold, it just doesn't work the same. You have to give them favorable matchup. You have to be able to exploit the defense and give them favorable matchups with that pre-snap motion. When you watch the Dolphins, it looks like they're playing a different sport. It almost looks like the CFL. And yeah, okay, they have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They clearly have a better offense than the Jets do from a personnel perspective. But they put those guys in ideal matchups. They don't just leave Tyreek Hill out on an island by himself like the Jets do with Garrett Wilson and just expect him to win. I get like, okay, we're podcasters, not NFL coaches. Like all these things sound so simple. But when you watch the Jets, it's like week 11, we've been saying the same things. And the definition of insanity is this Jets offense. They're doing the exact same things at week in and week out without scoring any points. So I think all of this is fair. The thing that really jumps out too, and you've been getting on Lazard's case and you're getting on Uzama's case, and you're exactly right about that because the Jets love playing 12 personnel. And who they play 12 personnel with, for the most part, Conklin and Uzama, although Rutgers been taking Conklin's reps at times in 12 personnel, which doesn't make any sense. And then you have Lazard and Wilson out wide. Lazard essentially is a tight end. I mean, let's just be honest. He's slow. He doesn't separate. Like I tweeted, he catches the ball like a bar of soap. So when the Jets are in 12 personnel, they're basically playing with 3 tight ends. Garrett Wilson is their only threat offensively. They're below average at quarterback, they're below average at offensive line, and then they have a great running back. It's just not a recipe for success unless you try to give them favorable matchups, use that pre-snap motion, stress the defense, and especially when your entire philosophy is trying to play for third and manageable and third and short. A lot of times with that pre-snap motion, you can steal a free 3, 4, 5 yards just off the motion, just off the nickel corner having to run across the line of scrimmage, trying to chase Xavier Gibson instead of just, a lot of times on third downs, they like to get Garrett Wilson in a slot to give him that slot matchup. And then you're left with Xavier Gibson out wide as like your Z receiver. It's like, this guy was an undrafted free agent from Stephen F. Austin that wasn't even supposed to make the team, made as a punt returner, had the great return week 1. Since then has been under, below average. I still like Gibson. I think he can bring something to this offense, but he's on third down, your outside receiver, and in a static offense with little to no pre-snap motion. Like, there are just some things that you watch with this offense, and hopefully some of them changes. I mean, like, they cut Carter. Sala alluded to playing Ruckert a little bit more. We'll see. So we'll get more Abanikanda because of Carter. We'll see if we get more a guy like Jason Brownlee. And again, I don't love, as a podcaster, as a fan or whatever, asking for the Jets to play some practice squad guys, because it's like, okay, they do see these guys every single day in practice. There has to be some sort of rationale for what they're doing. And it's easy for us to say, okay, Jason Brownlee made that sick one-handed catch in training camp. He must be good, forgetting that he didn't really do too much in preseason. But at the end of the day, you're basically playing with a tight end at wide receiver, an awful tight end in Uzama, a below-average quarterback, and a below-average offensive line. It makes sense. You want to see some of these young guys and see if they can bring a spark. But the main problem with this offense, yes, it's personnel, but it really is just the entire philosophy of this offense. It's some of the best offensive coordinators just know what to call, when to call it, which is maybe lazy, but it's like maybe lazy analysis. But it's like Kyle Shanahan consistently just has the perfect call for the right defense. And I don't know if that's just an innate thing or if that's just on your tendencies or you're too predictable or in your film study. I don't know what that is, but it seems like routinely Hackett is in the worst call possible for what they're running. And it is kind of inexcusable. I was talking about this with Marcus Johnson. You watch that Chargers game and they're running cover 3 beaters when it's like, it's clear the Chargers are playing cover 2, a ton of cover 2. And yet the Jets answers to cover 2, either they're not in them or their answers are just anemic or look like, I know this is lazy now, but like they look like a high school offense. There's nothing in it that, like, I hate the term like creativity, because it's like, okay, what does that mean? And I've used it myself, but it's like, okay, what does that mean? Is that just trick plays? You want to run more trick plays, which, to be fair, they did do. It should have been a touchdown, but they had Garrett Wilson with his bum elbow throw, and he threw it out of bounds. But it's like, no, it's like, okay, we're going to run all hitches, or we're going to run a curl and a flat, or like you say, 4 verticals from Madden. And it's like, I get you're trying to simplify things for Zach Wilson. You're trying to keep him in third manageable. You don't trust your quarterback. I get all the whys. But the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And you have the best defense in the league. So that's just, I guess, my point of view. And if you throw downfield and Zach Wilson turns the ball over, you trust this defense to get it back or to hold. And you also trust that potentially good things might happen, whether it's a PI or that they do get some sort of pass downfield and it sets them up in field goal range or they can score. But this methodical approach of playing offense in a 15-yard box and trying to get 12, 13-play scoring drives with this personnel and these concepts and this static offense, it's just gross.
Right.
It might be the worst offense I've seen, and I've watched a lot of bad offense.
Yeah, and out of what you mentioned right there, I think the biggest thing is just the lack of flexibility and willingness to change. And to go back to what you said about, some of the quarterbacks Hackett has worked with, and some of the veteran quarterbacks we've seen in the league, whether it's Peyton with Gase or Rodgers with Hackett, low pre-snap motion makes sense for them because they want to be the coach at the line of scrimmage. They want to, just see what's going on. And because when you do pre-snap motion, like, it does help you identify the defense, but it kind of makes the play a little more set to where, it's like when you run motion, it's kind of like, this is what we're doing. It's harder to adjust off of that. So that favors a veteran quarterback if you're doing that less often. But what it also does is it helps create natural advantages that the players don't have to create themselves. That's what the point of motion is, to where, we bring this guy in motion and now we got a mismatch against a linebacker. And that's created by coaching the play design. And when you're a team that's not talented, which the Jets aren't right now because of their quarterback and offensive line and other deficiencies, you have to, and receiver, you have to be able to create advantages to make up for that. The players aren't just going to win player versus player. So when you're Hackett and you're calling low pre-snap motion rates, low play action rates, you're not doing anything that is designed to create natural advantages to help the players. You're just asking them to go out there and win by themselves with no extra help. And it's just not going to work when you don't have talent. And yes, they do have Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, but it's easy to double Garrett Wilson when there's no one else you're afraid of. And Breece Hall can't go anywhere when the run blocking isn't good. So, yeah, it's just an overall lack of willingness to change the offense to fit the players. The low pre-snap motion, I think, is the biggest thing, because that would make sense if Rodgers was in there for the reasons we said. Get to the line. No one's – or, you're still motioning sometimes, but in general, no one's really moving, so you can get there, see what's going on, and move people around yourself and call that offense. But Rodgers isn't the quarterback anymore, and they should have realized that 10 weeks ago and decided, hey, we need to run more pre-snap motion to create some advantages for Zach Wilson in this run game.
At least Zach's using his feet more. At least he's running, getting out of the pocket a little bit more. Although they're not really setting him up on designed boots or anything, but
yeah, I think you should do that more. And another thing is, like, they don't really change it week to week either. They don't adjust to the opponent that much. And I know you talked about it with Marcus. Like, you did a great job previewing that with him, and I was looking out for, like, are they going to exploit some of these things you guys talked about? And then here they go on 2nd and goal from the 12. Let's have Lazard try to block Max Crosby. Let's not only run to Crosby's side, but have Lazard try to block him and Gibson as a lead blocker. Like, you're not playing to the weaknesses of the opponent. And then if you look at, like, I was looking at some of their personnel numbers earlier, and it barely changes from week to week. There's not a lot of difference in, like, the most.
They keep speaking of, like, the evolution of the offense. Like, we're close.
And there's no evolution. It's like the same things every single week.
Same thing you ran week 4, like week 3.
And that's like not what the NFL is. It's a game of matchups. You got to be, like, I was looking at some of the other top offenses. Like, you look at the Lions. They're one of the top 12 personnel teams. They're 9th in the league in 12 personnel. So it's something they like to do. They're good at it. They lead the league in yards per play in 12 personnel. But there's still a lot of fluctuation for them. They've had a game where they used it 7% of the time, and they had a game where they used it 43%. So that's a 36% difference in how high and low they're willing to go with one personnel package, which shows you they're more than willing to change very significantly based on what works for that game. The Jets, it's completely different. There's only a 12% difference in their high and low in 12 personnel, which is a third of the Lions. So that shows you that the Jets aren't really willing to change. They're staying in a very small window of, range of different things that they like to do. They're not really going outside of that bubble, which, again, if you have a good offense, a good quarterback, fine, keep it consistent, keep it simple, let your talent go win. But you don't have a lot of talent. You don't have a great quarterback. It's on the coach to realize that and say, hey, I have to take it upon myself to create some advantages so I can put these guys in better positions to succeed and overcome the lack of talent and the issues we have. But Hackett is not doing that. He's been stagnant. He's been predictable, and he hasn't been building the offense around either the strengths and weaknesses of his own team or the opponents each week. So it's just been, I think if you're not blaming Hackett or you're giving him a pass because of talent, I don't think you're paying close enough attention. I think he is the number one reason this offense is not playing well right now.
And number 2 would be receiver number 2. That's what I would say too. You were right on the money there. And again, it's hard. Douglas deserves some blame, but it's also like Corey Davis was going to be that. And I do actually like Corey Davis in that role because you don't need, your receiver. There are some teams that have a Tyreek Hill and a Jalen Waddle and a Jamar Chase and a T. Higgins. Oh, I know Higgins hasn't been great in terms of fantasy this year. But like a guy like Corey Davis is exactly what this Jets team needs. Just in terms of a guy who was never, it's not like Davis was an elite separator or anything, but he could separate more than Lazard. He had chemistry with Zach Wilson, and he could take some pressure off of Garrett Wilson. And if they do want to throw downfield, it's like, I hate to say it, I said it last week. I don't know if I would have traded Hardman because it's like, okay, let's say you do try to open up the offense and try to take more vertical shots. Beyond Garrett Wilson, Lazard's able to do it with Rodgers because Rodgers is so perfect and on his ball placement, and Lazard's one of those jump ball guys, and he can go up and get it in those tight windows. But beyond that, it's like, I guess it's Malik Taylor, Brownlee, like who do you have? I mean, Randall Cobb, like there's just, I guess they could go and sign Chosen Anderson. So I would say Hackett's number one, receivers number two. And the other thing, which falls on coaching, I guess, and it was really evident in this game, it's the penalties. It's the backbreaking penalties every single game, especially when you're trying to play this style of offense, when you only play within a 10 to 15-yard box every single play. If you get one holding penalty and you set yourself up in a 2nd and 20, they just don't have the guns to overcome it. And it's not like they're even trying to throw downfield. It's all about, okay, well, now we're in 2nd 20. Let's get a little 5 to 7 yard pass. Now we're in 3rd and 13, and we can set up a little receiver screen or something. It's just the penalties in this game were absolutely devastating. And it has been an issue all season long. But, Uzama's 2 penalties took away the touchdown. Lazard had a couple of penalties against the Chargers a week ago that took away huge plays. The penalties are an issue we haven't talked about enough on this podcast. And it's like, do you blame the players? Do you blame the coaching? I don't know. Is it something that you think is fixable? But I do think at the end of the day, penalties and being undisciplined on offense is on coaching. And it's also on coaching for not benching Uzama, trying to pretend that Uzama is some great run blocker. It's like you saw him on that rep, taking away the touchdown. Like, let's just drag this guy down by his jersey pad and tackle him. Little judo sweep. Like, it's like, what type of technique is that? Like, I know I'm not an elite run blocker. I can break down a blocking tape like some of the best on Twitter, but it's like, you watch that rep, it's like, how sloppy does it have to get for you to bench Uzama? And stop trying to pretend like he's some elite run blocker, because he has every once in a while, like on that Breece Hall touchdown play to the Giants, he'll have a good block. But 8 out of 10 blocks, this guy's tripping over his feet, missing the guy, holding, penalty. I don't know. It's just the penalties go hand in hand with all their issues in terms of philosophy, coaching, personnel. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we get to the Bills game. I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
Yeah, we've been talking about it all season. Bench Uzama, bench Cook, bench this guy.
I don't even say Cook had his best game. Cook was fine in this game.
He had some good runs, and there was the one run he actually, Becton kind of got in his way at the second level. Could have been much bigger. So, if he's going to keep getting the ball and if he keeps running like that, then by all means, that's great. Better late than never. I would prefer to see Izzy get more carries than him, because, I'm not going to be swayed by one good game where he had 4 carries out of his first good game in 9 games. But, it's a good sign. Better, like I said, better late than never.
Yeah, and that goes, obviously they cut Michael Carter, but it was something that we would have talked about on this podcast, because you included in your article, and then he got cut like 3 hours later. But it's like they were completely misusing Michael Carter as a 3rd down running back the entire season. And how ineffective could that guy have been? I like Carter as in terms of like every time you see videos of him off the field, he seems like a nice guy. I'm sure he was you can tell by the reaction to him getting cut. He was well liked in that locker room. He did improve as a pass blocker. I'll give him that. I felt like this year he was a lot better in terms of protecting the quarterback. But how many drops did that guy have to have? How many ineffective runs did that guy have to have? He had such a good rookie season, but the last year and a half, he's just clearly not been there. He's clearly been a downgrade from Breece. And it's like you're taking Breece Hall out of the game on 3rd down. You're taking your second best player on offense, arguably best player on offense. It's a toss-up.
Arguably second best receiver, maybe 3rd.
Yeah, exactly. Off the field on 3rd down. And it's like to put in Michael Carter, who's like 5'7", and it's like he's gotten better, but he had the back-breaking chipping penalty, which you said it wasn't a penalty. But it's like he's not a threat as a receiver. I felt like it
wasn't, but regardless, yeah. But that's another thing that should help going forward. We'll see how they manage this running back rotation now, but I feel like
we're going to get Dalvin Cook now.
Maybe I'm that's what I was going to say. Maybe I'm wrong, and Dalvin Cook is the new 3rd down back like Ty Johnson was the past 2 years, but I feel like the door is wide open now.
Yeah. Is Dalvin Cook just telling the announcers every game before the game, or like the media, or what's it called? Like the interviews they have on Saturdays with the commentators, is every time he's just telling them, like, I just need more carries, because every game for the last month, it's just like, oh, this guy just is itching for more carries. It's like, I know, but up until last game, he was averaging what was he averaging? 2.3 yards a carry?
Under 3. But yeah, I feel like the door is wide open for you to get more 3rd down snaps for Breece Hall, because he's probably your second best receiver, maybe 3rd with Conklin, but he's been one of the best receiving backs this year. The Giants play, he had a 30-plus yard screen in this game. His blocking, I feel like, has been pretty solid this year. And, this guy's not been on the field on 3rd down all year. It's like, why are you bad on 3rd down? Well, maybe it's because your best or second best offensive player is never on the field when you're on third down. It's like, he's just not even a part of that down. He's had 34 targets this year. 3 of them came on third down. That's just not going to cut it when he's one of the best receiving backs in the league. It makes no sense. So hopefully, if I were in charge, I would give all of those reps to Breece Hall. And that doesn't mean I'm sitting here saying he should play the whole game, because then I think you take some of Hall's early down carries, give some of those to Izzy, maybe 1 or 2 to Cook as well, just to keep Breece fresh now that he's playing more on third down. But the guy's a really good playmaker in the passing game. I think he can be right up there with the Ecklers and McCaffreys of the world in terms of receiving impact at running back. It's just he hasn't been playing on third down, but now those snaps are available. So for a team that's converting 25% of its third downs, might actually be lower than that now, but whatever it is, get your best offensive player or second best.
I think it might be higher. I think they were like
third down.
7 for. I think they're actually third down stats in this game might have raised their average. They're 7 for 16.
25%, 25.0.
All right, that bounced out. Jesus.
So go ahead, put Breece Hall out there on third down.
We'll talk about the Bills game. I guess we'll segue into it with this. The one thing I do want to say, though, that we didn't talk about is I think the offensive line deserves some credit. I know Newman wasn't perfect and Becton got beat, but like in terms of, I thought Max Mitchell was just going to get absolutely bullied by Max Crosby this entire game, and he held his own. I mean, I know the Hail Mary, he got bullied, and Max Mitchell's bad in the run game, and Newman got destroyed in the interception, and Newman allowed a lot of pressures. But like as a whole, for what I was expecting against one of the best pass rushers in all of football, I felt like Max Mitchell held his own. And this offensive line did their job in this game. They're going to get a much tougher test this week against the Buffalo Bills, who are second in the league in sacks, already injured. The Jets starting quarterback this season, Ed Oliver's been going off. They have Von Miller. They have a great defensive line, this Bills team does. And so for all the Bills' struggles this season and their setbacks compared to years past, this defensive line has never been, or is as good as ever. And this Jets offensive line is going to need to rise to the occasion. Whether the run game hasn't really been there, but in terms of pass protection in that Raiders game, I thought they were there. And we'll see what it looks like. Apparently Schweitzer's been practicing, and he looked all right. So maybe they get Schweitzer to fill in for Newman. Dwayne Brown was full practice, so I would expect that he might be coming back. And so maybe you're seeing Dwayne Brown back at left tackle, which I'm a little nervous about, and then moving Becton back to right tackle. And who knows what this offensive line is exactly going to look like, but I just thought on the rewatch, I was like, you know what, this pass protection's all right. Yeah, considering Marcus, I think, predicted like 5 sacks for Crosby. I predicted 3. I think they did an all right job, but they're going to need to rise to the occasion on Sunday. And speaking of Sunday, Michael, I guess we'll hop into it. And we're riding this Jets offense. I know the Jets have the best defense in the league, and we just never talk about it because what else is there to say? But we will talk about this Jets defense. But let's just stick with this Jets offense for a little bit more, and then we'll talk about the Jets defense versus Josh Allen, which is probably the most interesting part about the matchup. But for us, it's like, can the Jets score a touchdown in this game? That's my question to you, Michael. Do you think the Jets are going to score a touchdown in this game?
No.
All right, that's the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. You know what my prediction
thanks
is?
for listening. We'll be back next week, and make sure to subscribe on YouTube.
It would be very Gaysian. Actually, I have a question.
It's just hard to say they're going to score one. It's been 11 quarters in a row. Now they're going to against the Chargers and Raiders and Giants, and then they're going to go to Buffalo.
Would you rather have Adam Gase as your offensive coordinator or Nathaniel Hackett? Because at least Gase could scheme up a good opening drive touchdown and just do nothing the rest of the game. But like at least that first 10 to 12 play script he always had down. At least you knew that he could lock himself in a dark room and scheme together those 10 plays that would work on Sundays. Yeah, well, that didn't really work that week. Although if you remember, I think they did have a good opening drive against the Bengals. Then they didn't score though.
It's hard to pick right now. That's really the whole point of the discussion, the fact that it's not clear as day Hackett. But actually, I'll say that they will score a touchdown. They're overdue. They won't go 3 games in a row without a touchdown. Will they score more than 1? That I don't know.
2 touchdowns? Well, if they're going to score a touchdown in this game, the offensive line is going to have to rise to the occasion. This Bills defensive line, Michael, does it scare you? Does it kind of feel like maybe Zach Wilson might be getting harassed all game? It does feel like that. It could go one of 2 ways. Either the wheels have fully fallen off in this season after this loss to Vegas, and we just witnessed an 8-sack, 3-turnover game from Zach Wilson, or it's they turn the page, they make some of those offensive changes, and maybe they go and have a first quarter touchdown, and everybody on Jets Twitter, relaxes for a little bit. Maybe the Jets can pull the upset and sweep the Bills for the first time since, when was the last time the Jets swept the Bills? 2016? 2016 they swept them, right?
Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
so.
So I guess for me, this game starts with the offensive line. So I don't know where you want to take it from that, but what about this Bills defense scares you in this matchup?
I mean, overall, I think the Bills' defense is more exploitable than it's really ever been in their run of success the past few years here, and that's mostly because of the injuries they've had. But the one thing they do still have is a great pass rush. I mean, they got the second most sacks right now. They got the most quarterback hits in the league, so they can still get after you. And for a team with a shaky offensive line and a quarterback who takes a lot of sacks generally, that's a huge problem. So the Bills do have issues in the secondary at linebacker. Like overall, their defense has not been great because of some of the losses they've had. And even as great as their pass rush is, Von Miller has, I think at this point, the injuries have kind of added up in the age. He's not the same anymore. He hasn't done much of anything since he came back. So it's not the same Bills defense we're used to seeing, but they can still get after the quarterback. But if you can't protect your quarterback, then it's hard to exploit some of the coverage issues that they have. And the same goes for the run defense. I mean, they're 29th in yards per rush attempt allowed, but it's also going to be hard to stop that if, or to exploit that if the box is loaded because you can't protect and you can't punish the coverage in the back end. So it all starts with that protection as per usual with the Jets, but we'll see what happens, which offensive line combination they go with, because it's a well-rounded Bills pass rush, especially with Miller now not being the same. It's the depth of this group that really scares you. I mean, they got Rousseau and they got Epineza on the edge. Ed Oliver is having a great season on the interior. Um, he's one of the leaders in pressures and pressure rate among all defensive tackles. He's been one of those top guys this year. Leonard Floyd is in there, Jordan Phillips. So they got a lot of weapons, and it's going to be key for the offensive line communication to be really good because I feel like the Jets struggle a lot with stunts. That's something they've had a lot of issues with defending as an offensive line, and that comes down to communication. And if you're starting a new offensive line unit, which they might with Dwayne Brown, then I feel like that makes it even harder to defend against those type of plays. So we'll see how it goes. But I mean, there is an opportunity for the Jets to score points here. Like I said, the Bills' defense has not been great. They've given up at least 24 in 3 of the past 4 games. One of those opponents was the Patriots. There is a chance to put up points here. It's just it all starts with that pass protection. If they can lock that down, I think they will have a good game. There are opportunities to make plays here, but all starts up front.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see how they play Zach Wilson because going back to every time we've done a Bills preview pod, I make the point that the Bills and defense have similar defensive philosophies in terms of they love to win with 4, both have great defensive lines. It all starts with them up front. And then they like to play shell coverage. They like to play a lot of quarters, take away some of the deep shots, and force you to go underneath and run the football. And because of their, in the past, great linebacker play and great safety play, it's been really hard because guys like Milano and Tremaine Edmonds would just eat up so much of the field. But the Bills don't have those linebackers this year, especially with Milano getting injured, which will be a big difference from their Week 1 game. I'm curious, though, because the Jets' offense has been so bad and because the reputation for Zach Wilson is not good around the league, and because of what the Bills did against him last time or 2 times, I guess, when the Jets played him at home last year in 2022. They played a lot more cover 1. A lot more man coverage. They loaded the box. They tried to stop Breece Hall. And Zach Wilson had one of his better games. I look at this Russell Wilson passing chart from his game last week, which he was pretty good. 24-29, 193 yards, 2 touchdowns. But all but 2 of those completions were inside 10 yards. A lot of short passes, short to the right, strangely enough. A lot of screens, a lot of stuff underneath, which is contradictory to what we're saying. I still think they should try some of those at least 2 or 3 play action vertical shots in this game, especially if the Bills really start loading the box and just say, hey, we're going to stop Breece Hall. We're going to key in on Garrett Wilson, beat us with anybody else. If they start loading the box, going single high, pressing their corners, it is time for Zach Wilson to try to go for this Jets offense to try to open it up and have Zach Wilson attack down the field. What do you make of how the Bills might play Zach Wilson in this one and how Zach Wilson should try to attack this Bills defense? Because on paper, you look at this Bills defense, it's similar to the Jets. Go underneath, run the football well, and I do trust the Jets that as ugly as it's been the last few weeks, is they can get into those style of fights and win those games. Although defenses playing Zach Wilson, when you look at their history, they like to go single high, they like to load the box, and they like to get after him and force him to beat you downfield. So is that what you think the Bills are going to do, or you think they'll stay in character to what they've been doing all season?
Yeah, I think from a Jets perspective, when we say we want the Jets to be more aggressive and let Zach play and not be so conservative, predictable, all those things, it doesn't even
Call Hail
necessarily
Mary
mean you have
every
to.
play.
Yeah, it doesn't even necessarily mean you have to do that and throw a bunch of bombs every single play. It's just about being willing to throw the ball. It doesn't have to be 50 yards down the field. It could be intermediate. Um, that's really the biggest thing. It's like using play actions in spots where it makes sense. Use pre-snap motion to help set up a passing concept when it makes sense. Things like that. It doesn't even have to be a bunch of deep shots. So we know the Bills are an anti-big play defense. That's always been their MO under Sean McDermott, is taking away those deep passes. And they've still done that pretty well this season. They haven't given up a 40-plus yard completion this year, but what they have done is they've given up a ton of intermediate passes. Whether in their safeties, both of their safeties, Poyer and Micah Hyde, and Hyde is up in the air for this game. Both of them are allowing a passer rating over 100 on throws in their direction this year. So I don't think you need to be afraid of them. Then you look at the linebackers in the middle of the field. They've had issues at that position as well. Both their top linebackers outside Milano, passer rating allowed over 90. So there are a lot of holes in that back end. And I think middle of the field, attacking intermediate should be the goal for the Jets. And I think the Bills are going to try and do what they do. And that's take away the big plays. And I think they are going to give the Jets opportunities to make some of those intermediate plays. I mean, that's what happened last year in that Bills game. And, the Jets, their passing game wasn't necessarily explosive in that Bills game last year. And the run game was a big part of winning that. Obviously, the defense did a great job, but it was one of Zach Wilson's more efficient games, and that's because the Jets used a lot of play action. They attacked short and they attacked quick, and he was pretty effective with that, and he was able to lead some good drives, make big plays in spots where they needed them. So a similar game plan this week with maybe not to the extent of last year's Bills game where it was a lot of screens and really short passes. Extend that downfield a little bit, but I think the same mentality of a lot of play action, attacking middle of the field is the way to go. And then obviously sprinkle in those deep shots when it's the right time to do it, because
I like them early.
Yeah, and they had, like, the Raiders game, there were, even though they didn't hit on them, like, there were good opportunities there. There was one of the bad Zach plays was Lazard actually finally separated on a deep route, but Zach kind of rushed the throw, threw flat-footed, off platform, airmailed it. He missed that one. Then later he throws a great throw to Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson can't catch it, but those opportunities were there. So they've shown the ability to get some of these plays open. Got to hit it at some point, right, with Zach Wilson and the arm talent that he has. So definitely sprinkle those shots in. But you know what the Bills do, and that's try to discourage those. So I think the weakness is going to be middle of the field, intermediate, more so than short game, because, again, like we've been saying, the Jets really shouldn't try to be a 10-play drive type of offense. They're just not that kind of team. They're more of a big play. They're built more to be a big play team. So quick passes, I don't know if that's really what
explosive offense in the league.
They do the most one-play offensive drives. They're definitely the most explosive offense in the league based on that. So yeah, I'm saying more go intermediate passes. So you get
take advantage of those. Take advantage of those
yak
linebackers.
Opportunities, like the Raiders. The big play against the Raiders where Garrett Wilson got the 40 yards or so.
Right.
Those are the type of throws, like big dig routes in the middle, get 15 through the air and put the guy in position to get as much as he can after that with yak. Those are the throws that I would like to see them focus on.
Yeah, I would attack these weak corners, especially early. If you remember that Bills game last year, I think their first play of the game was like a deep bomb to Denzel Mims down the sideline, and it was incomplete. But I do think you start to get the respect of the defense if you at least show that you're willing to throw down the field. But the weakness of this Bills defense is in the linebacking core, and I think that this is the game where the Bills on the season are 19th in rushing yards allowed. You saw Week 1, the Jets' first play of the season was a big Breece Hall run. So I do think they're going to try to feature Breece Hall heavily in this game, but it's opening up that play action money down on second down. And like you said, taking those shots intermediate, drawing the linebackers in and hitting them over the middle, which I think you've seen Zach Wilson do a couple times this season. It's just that they haven't really been in a situation to do it. I still would take 2, 3, 4 vertical shots just to get the respect of the defense, and because I think that, like you said, this offense isn't built to score a lot of points. Their best shot is to try to hit on one of those. But yeah, it's the play action game. I mean, I think this is really a game where you want to be aggressive throwing the ball, but it has to be a lot of play action. And we'll see if Brown comes back, if Schweitzer comes back. I mean, maybe that makes enough of a difference where you feel good about the run game in this one, because I think Max Mitchell did a great job on Crosby in terms of pass protection, but he's not good in the run game, and he's really affecting them there. But Brown is also not amazing in the run game, but he's better than Mitchell, and Schweitzer, I think, is pretty good in the run game. So you bring Tippmann, Schweitzer, Lakin is hit or miss. Becton's a plus in the run game. Maybe you're able to get something on the ground, and you can win it that way. But obviously, this game is really going to be won on the defensive side of the ball. It's how do the Jets contain Josh Allen for the 5th time in a row? How many good games have they had against Josh Allen? End of 2021, 2 games last year, and then the start. So this would be the 5th game in a row that the Jets have been able to bottle up Josh Allen if they're able to do it. He's been a little bit of a slump, and the main thing with Allen this year has been the turnovers, because he still has the wow plays. He's still a great quarterback, but this Bills offense and this Bills team is really built to win when he's a superstar and he's carrying them, and they can't do that when they're second in the league in turnovers. So I don't know where you want to start with this Jets defense, but are there any matchups that you're keeping an eye on? I think one of the ones that we were kind of surprised at was looking at this Bills offensive line. We always look at Spencer Brown as the guy that the Jets can abuse, but this Bills O-line as a whole has been pretty solid this year.
Yeah, I think when you look at the Jets defense against this Bills offense, the success that they've had against them has been so consistent, really, over the, going back to last year and then into the first game this year, that you feel really good that the Jets just match up well against them and can continue that success. But at the same time, you feel like at some point the Bills got to figure something out and get some success, right? Is Josh Allen really going to have a 4th consecutive game where the Jets hold him?
5th. Yeah, listen to me.
Yeah, 5th. I got was he that bad in that 2021 game? I got to look.
They had 1 touchdown and then they shut him down for like 3 quarters. And that Jets defense was bad too.
Right. So I mean, it's just such a good string of success. I think the one thing Allen has been able to consistently do against the Jets is use his legs. So I feel like he's going to have an emphasis on that. Even last year, like he had the big 40-yard touchdown run, whatever it was. So I think we're going to see the Bills do a lot of that, because especially this year, Jets have had a lot of trouble with quarterback runs. It's one of the few things that defense has consistently struggled with. So I think they're going to try to exploit that, and the Jets need to be ready for that. But they've just done such a good job of forcing turnovers against Allen, defending the deep pass really, really well at both corner and safety. Like in the Bills game this year, in week 1, is Jordan Whitehead, obviously, with the 3 picks. But you go back to last year and the way the corners played in that win against the Bills in week 9, whenever it was, that was cornerback play was what really was driving that, whether it was DJ Reed on that deep bomb against Diggs, whether it was Sauce, who had an interception and also the game-winning pass deflection at the end. But the cornerback play and the coverage on deep passes was so good. And the Bills love to air the ball out, pass it vertically. You have to be able to have the defensive back play to counter that. And that is what I really feel like has been the key to the Jets playing so well against the Bills. So it comes down to can these defensive backs continue doing what they've done so well against these Bills receivers? I feel like the Bills are going to be creative, maybe try some new things that they haven't against the Jets these past couple of years. And the Jets need to be ready for that, because, I mean, the Bills have started games well against the Jets. That's the thing, because other than, the one in Buffalo last year when they almost got shut out in the first half until C.J. Mosley decided to leapfrog the offensive line. But the game the Jets won last year, it was 14-3. Buffalo had the lead in the first half. And this year was 13-3. So those 2 first halves between those couple games, that's pretty typical for the Bills. But the second half of those games, the Jets went into shutdown mode. So I would like to see the Jets be ready in the first half for the Bills to maybe try some creative things against them. And if they could do that, be ready for what the Bills come out with, especially with the new offensive coordinator this week, as they potentially mix things up. If they could weather the storm in the first half, keep themselves in the game, and with the way the Jets have played in the second half this year, all season, I think you feel really good that you could, have a strong second half as well and put together a strong four-quarter defensive performance. I think the first half is what's going to be really key for this Jets defense. If they get in a hole on the road against Buffalo in the cold, it's going to be rough, even if the
Is it going to be that
defense
cold? I thought it was going to be.
does its usual thing. Just looked at it.
I saw a tweet that it was
44.
going to be. Yeah. Well, we'll
Pretty
see. I
cold.
saw a tweet that it was not going to be good, and then I looked at it and I was like, looks fine. The one thing
No,
that
it
the
does look like
Bills.
weather, but cold.
Yeah. The one thing that the Bills have been better at this year is running the ball, and I think that's correlated to their offensive line play. But you look at how they played against the Broncos, and yeah, they had a few big runs that skews us. But James Cook had 12 carries for 109 yards. Latavius Murray had 9 carries for 68 yards. And then you mentioned Josh Allen's had a lot of success on the ground against this Jets defense. One of the concerns or criticisms I've seen about Ken Dorsey, which by the way I can't think of without seeing that video of him just freaking out in the booth against the Dolphins, which I don't even want to criticize because it's probably what I would look like as an OC. I mean, I do that anyways in my living room. But one of the things that I've seen is them not playing from under center enough with Josh Allen, playing almost exclusively out of the shotgun. I do expect to see the Bills under center a lot more, and I think you're going to see them run the football. Try to change the emphasis. I know Joe Brady's like the young hotshot offensive coordinator, not anymore, but used to be the young hotshot offensive coordinator with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and throwing the ball. But I do anticipate the Bills getting under center a little bit and trying to run the ball against this Jets defense and having some success because the Jets, especially without Al Woods, you saw Josh Jacobs had the big run last week. They've shown that they've been a little susceptible on the ground this year, trying to throw the ball against this Jets defense, especially with the quarterback who's been prone to the turnovers with these pass rushers that can create the big plays, isn't a recipe for success. So for the Bills, I think their recipe is run the ball, and then that'll open up some play action shots and try to attack over the middle, try to target CJ Mosley in coverage with Dalton Kincaid. But I really think it starts on the ground for the Bills, whether that's James Cook and Murray or it's Josh Allen. I think it's really going to be running the football, and that's what the Jets have to be keyed in on. Tanzel Smart was waived. He's put back on the practice squad. Did they replace him at defensive tackle? Because I'm just trying to think. I mean, I do think. I mean, as much as we criticize Al Woods in terms of pass rusher, and he was a negative when he was out there because teams knew that they were going to throw the ball, or they should throw the ball because he couldn't get after the passer. But he did eat up a lot of space on the ground, and it's behind Quentin Williams. It's like you got Solomon Thomas and Quentin Jefferson, who Thomas is getting after a little bit, but he's undersized. Quentin Jefferson's more of a pass rushing defensive tackle, and they put JFM inside, they'll put Jermaine Johnson inside, but none of those guys are space eaters like Al Woods is. And if you can get past that initial level of the Jets defense, these linebackers have been great. Quincy Williams fills the gaps, but you saw that on that run. We were watching that run against Jacobs. They just created a little hole, and they were able to get past Mosley. And it's like Tony Adams has not been great on filling the third level of this Jets defense and run defense. When running backs have been able to get to that third level, it seems like he's been allowing some big runs. And so for me, that's the big key for this Jets defense is they have to bottle up the ground game. They can't be allowing big runs, big consistent runs, because not only is that going to lead to points for Buffalo, but I think it's going to open up those play action shots because I just think Buffalo's been so one-dimensional with Allen. The Jets have had a lot of success against them. But if the Bills start leaning on running the ball, we'll see. I do have a good idea for my X factor for this one, but I'll save it for the end. I know this is a long podcast. Let's just get to where the Jets are better, where the Bills are better. We'll do our random predictions, and then we'll get out. We'll do the X factors, and then we'll get out of here. Unless there's anything else you want to add on matchups.
Quickly one more thing in terms of Jets defense against the Bills offense. I didn't realize how few sacked or how infrequently Josh Allen has been sacked this year. Obviously, the Jets got him 5 times in that opener, but since then he's only taken 8 sacks the rest of the season. He's one of the least sacked quarterbacks in the league. Only Mahomes
he's throwing interceptions.
Yeah, because he's too busy throwing interceptions when he gets pressured instead. But since that Jets game, the most sacks he's taken in a game is 2, and he's had 4 games with 0 sacks. So yeah, that was a huge outlier that the Jets were able to pull that off, and obviously it was a very key part of them having that defensive success was getting those sacks, and they generally weren't huge sacks. It was only 5 sacks for 19 yards. Some of them were just him scrambling and kind of getting back to the line. But regardless, they were able to rein him in pretty well in regards to his movement and get some sacks there. And that was a big part of that success. But no one else has really been able to do that. What they have been able to do is get those turnovers. But the Jets also did that in week 1. So we'll see if the Jets can replicate those sacks. And if they can't, can they continue to build on the turnover woes that he has had and that he especially had in week 1 against the Jets?
All right, let's do where the Jets are better, where the Bills are better. The quarterback, we can just skip this one. We know it's Josh Allen, although he's been turning the ball over more than Zach Wilson. Running back, and I guess some of these are pretty obvious because I think we've done this. I mean, we did this exact one week 1. But quarterback, Bills. Running back, Jets. Receiver, Bills. Yeah, sorry. I paused for a second because I was like, all right, well, Diggs and Wilson. I'd rather have Wilson, and then Gabe Davis and Lazard are similar, but Davis is still better than Lazard, and I guess I'll take Hardy and Sherfield over Gibson and. I mean, were we Irvin Charles? Is that who we're saying is next in line? Malik Taylor.
Yes, Malik Taylor.
Yeah. So Bills get quarterback and receiver.
Malik Taylor didn't work out like you wanted them to. Didn't work out.
I know. I know. They are throwing it up to Malik. I just, it's going to hit one of these days. Tight end. Bills. Depends if Uzama's playing. Kincaid's been pretty good. You're right. All right, fine. Bills get tight end. Bills are probably also going to get this entire offensive line, I'd say. Dawkins and Brown are better than Becton and Mitchell.
Dawson
or Brown and Becton.
Out, so maybe that makes it more interesting.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, but they have Kincaid, who's been pretty good.
Yeah.
And if the Jets are getting less Uzama, I'd rather have the Jets tight end room. If the Jets are having Conklin and Rucker, maybe we'll go Pusher.
Yeah,
Kincaid's the best tight end, especially receiving out of all of them. But if the Jets are limiting Uzama to strictly 13 personnel and special teams, I would take the Jets. So I guess we can go push on tight end. Offensive tackle, Bills. All right. Speak now? Or sure. Okay.
I mean, I was just looking at tight end. I mean, Conklin's numbers aren't that different than Kincaid. Kincaid averaging 5 catches for 43 yards, Conklin 4 for 40 yards. And we know it's much different quarterbacks and overall offenses. So I don't know. Maybe go Jets because we like Rucker as number 2.
I just don't trust
if Uzama weren't playing.
That's why I don't trust him to not play Uzama.
I just don't know much about Quinton Morris, the Bills' second tight end. But,
until we see significantly less Uzama, I think we go push here. I'm trying to be fair and balanced. I think you give both offensive. I think you give the entire offensive line to the Bills, so interior and offensive tackle.
Conklin's been real good. Like everyone always talks about the Jets' offense. Garrett, Brees, and nobody else. I know Conklin isn't on their level, but he is an above average, solid starting tight end.
They have not had a good. He's the best tight end since Keller, which that's I guess a low bar considering you're competing. It's like Jeff Cumberland and Kellen Davis, and I don't even know who else.
Jason Morrow.
Herndon, Amaro. All right, edge is interesting. I think I would give it to the Jets, although the Bills do have a good edge group with Rousseau and Miller, Floyd, Nip, and Eza, but I would take Huff, JFM. Jermaine Johnson's playing at the elite level.
Huff and Jermaine Johnson's starting to climb up there as one of the best edge duos in the league with the way JJ is playing.
Interior, Ed Oliver's been playing pretty well, but I would still take Quinnen over him. And Quentin Jefferson never gets talked about, but he's been pretty good. I know Linval Joseph's been all right for the Bills this season. They also have Tim Settle, but they don't have Taquan Jones. He's on IR. Jordan Phillips is questionable for this game. I would take the Jets interior. I think Quinnen's the best player.
Yeah.
And Quentin Jefferson's been good. Linebacker, it's Jets, not even close. The Jets really get down on offense and then clean up on defense. Corner, not close. The Jets win that. And then safety, I would give the Bills with Hyde and Poyer. I think that's the fastest we've ever – and say it, if you have anything else, you can feel free. But I think that's the fastest we've ever moved through that. And that would give the Jets 5, running back, edge, defensive tackle, linebacker, and corner. And that would give the Bills 5, quarterback, receiver, interior, offensive line, offensive tackle, and safety. And we push it tight end. Coaching, we have one edge or another. I mean, Jets coaching has been pretty bad on the offensive side of the ball this year. And not getting that.
The Jets can get coaching against anyone right now.
The Bills just fired their OC, but yeah. All right, we won't do coaching. Michael, who's your X factor for this one?
Well, you said you. I haven't. I don't know if I've come up with one yet. You said you have one. Do you want to go first?
Quinnen Williams.
All right.
The Jets. I like it. He's been good this year, creating pressures. I would like to see him get a sack. I know it's an overrated stat, but still. But at the very least, this is the type of game where you really want to see him wreak havoc. It's a good Bills offensive line, but it's one that I think they're going to try to run the ball on that big Jacobs run. I think you could blame Quinnen a little bit for getting pushed out of his spot. I mean, I think he did get doubled, and Tenzel got pushed out of there, and Mosley got blocked well. So it's not all on Quinnen, but Quinnen has to be dominant for this Jets run defense to be a plus. And I think he needs to bring his A game, stuff James Cook in this game, get after Allen, force some mistakes. A lot of turnovers come from interior pressure. And so for me, the X factor in this one has been Quinn Williams. I have to say, my score predictions, which we're going to get to, have been awful this season. But my X factors have been very good because even last week I chose Becton, and like you said, he had the bad block on the Dalvin Cook. I've been good at choosing who's going to blow the game for the Jets, so hopefully it's not Quinn Williams. But I think all season long,
strip sack, right?
He did, yeah, he did, and then he recovered it though. So, my X factors the last few weeks have been bad, but before that I had some good picks. So Quinn Williams for this week is my X factor. Michael, who's yours?
Well, I was going to say Becton, but you picked him last week, so do I have to pick a different one?
No, you can pick Becton. You haven't picked him.
I feel like he's a good pick for this week because, like we said earlier, I think it comes down to can the Jets block this Bills pass rush and give themselves a chance to win this game. I mean, you boil it down, you feel pretty confident in what the defense is going to do. You look at this Jets offense against the Bills defense, you feel like there's some matchups you can take advantage of in the secondary, but none of that matters if you can't block. So I look at Mekhi Becton against a really solid group of Bills edge rushers, and he needs to have a great game. And I feel like he's maybe a little overrated by fans because, yeah, he's stayed healthy and he's probably been their best lineman, but he has given up 6 sacks this year. A couple of them were strip sacks. I believe he has 7 or 8 penalties, so there have been mistakes. I don't think he's been great, but I guess he's been okay. But this is a great opportunity for him to get back to, I don't want to say rookie year Becton because he had ups and downs, but the peaks of rookie year Becton. Because he had some really signature performances. That was the thing. Like, there were a couple games in there, whether it was the Chargers game against Bosa and Ingram. There were a few games in the Colts game against Justin Houston. He had some games where just start to finish, sometimes against really good competition too. It was like, this is a show. There are a lot of highlights here to put out. And this year, he's been stable, I guess, but he hasn't really had that type of game. And this is a great time to pull that out against this great pass rush, lock down and pass protection, give Zach Wilson a chance to make some plays happen. And then in the run game, can the Jets get back to being a team that could win with the ground game? Because since AVT's gone out, there's been nothing to speak of for this run game. I mean, 4 games without Elijah Vera-Tucker, Breece Hall's yards per carry, 3.3, 1.4, 3.1, 2.2. Jets are not going to be a good offensive team with that. So Mekhi Becton is their best, most talented run blocker. He needs to have a big game paving some holes for Breece Hall, in addition to his pass protection.
All right, let's hear some random predictions. Michael, you want to start on this one?
Random prediction. What did we say last week? Was I anywhere close?
I deleted it. Well, I thought Breece Hall was going to have a big run down the left side. I was preaching that on Twitter, on this podcast. I thought Breece Hall was going to go off.
I forgot. I wasn't on the preview. Yeah, I didn't make a random prediction.
So I was wrong on that. I had Breece Hall I said Breece Hall was going to have a big run, and then I said Gardner was going to have his first interception, and Quinn was going to have his first sack. So I've been whiffing on these. So this is just, the success rate on the random predictions are pretty low. You seem preoccupied. I guess I'll start. I'll go with Tyler Conklin, red zone touchdown to snap the Jets' touchdown streak. I think Conklin gets in there, maybe off a little play action they throw it to Conklin, but I think the Jets are going to snap their touchdown streak this week, and it'll be Conklin on the receiving end of it. I couldn't tell you the amount of confidence I have in that prediction, but that's my prediction for this week. Offensively, I'll think of a defensive one. What's your offensive prediction?
I'm going to say Garrett Wilson gets a 30-plus yard touchdown. Breece Hall gets a red zone touchdown reception.
Okay. All right. Write that down.
2 passing touchdowns.
Last one defensively, I'll go Quincy Williams forced fumble. Quincy Williams forced fumble. I feel pretty good about that. I think I wrote it a strip sack.
I'm going to say 2 interceptions. 2 interceptions, 1 by Tony Adams, and Sauce gets his first of the year.
Nice. Lastly, score prediction. Now you fell to 7-2. You fell to 7-2. I've fallen to 4-5. I'm pretty level with the Jets. I'm exactly level with the Jets. I'm trying to get to 5-5. I've predicted the Jets to win almost every single game, and then I think the ones that I predicted to lose was like the Eagles, and then I've been wrong in a couple of them. It's hard because I have a good feeling about this matchup, but because I keep predicting them to win and they keep losing, me predicting them to win is not giving them any good mojo. So I'm going to go the Jets are going to lose. How about that? I like this matchup for the Jets, but I think the Jets are going to lose. All right.
Yeah, that's fair.
Freaking.
You got a score? Waiting.
I'm thinking.
Come on.
10 to
Some numbers out there.
14. I don't know. 10 to 14.
10 to 14. Wow.
We can't say wow when you look at they put up like 6 points, 9 points, 12 points.
I just feel like a Bills game is rarely that kind of barn burner, but I guess that makes sense.
What they win week one?
It was 23 to 6, 22 to 16. All right, I'm going Bills as well, but I'm gonna say 21 to 17.
21-17 Bills. Wow, a couple of non-believers in this podcast this week. All right. Well, I guess I'll do. I mean, comment below with your random prediction. I do. I guess here's the last question. Probably will be the title of the podcast. So I'll point this to you. But is the Jets season over if they lose this game? If they fall to 4-6, it's not over, but
it's not over. But Miami coming up next after that.
Miami twice. You've got
2 of the next
Texans.
4 games.
You got the Texans who are sneaky with Stroud, although I like the Jets in that one. The Falcons.
Well, let's map out the road. So you'd be 4-6, and let's say Rodgers comes back for the Commanders. Best case dream scenario. You got 4 games up until that. Well, let's be realistic. Say Commanders. 4 games, 4-6 to get to 7-7. You got to win 3 of them.
3 months. After
2 of those are against the Dolphins, and then you got to take 1 out of 2 against Houston and Atlanta. And Houston looks like a good team. Falcons are a pretty average team, so that's really hard.
AFC is a bloodbath. What do you think the one difference that the Jets have this year is that the AFC East has not been very good. I mean, the Bills are 5-5. I know there was that stat that if the Jets win this game and the Raiders somehow beat the Dolphins, that Jets-Dolphins game will be for first place in the AFC East. So I'm conditioned because every year I've watched the Jets, they've just been fighting for a wild card spot. They've never actually been in it for the division, except I guess 2010 they were kind of in it, and maybe 2015 earlier in the year. But they do have a shot at the division if they win the right games. If they sweep the Bills and they beat the Dolphins, if they blew a game to the Falcons and they blew a game to the Dolphins, or I don't know. Blew 1 game to the Dolphins, whatever. If Commanders, thank you, just give me a random game. Falcons, Texans, I don't know. If they win the right games and the chips fall their way in terms of the Bills, this isn't their year. Too many injuries, and the Dolphins, the wheels start to fall off as the weather gets colder. In fact, let me look at the Dolphins' schedule as we get down the stretch here, because that is really what could help them out is that the Dolphins start to fall apart. How many cold weather games do they got? Well, they got to face this Jets defense twice. They have a lot of winnable games. They got Cowboys and Ravens though, and the Bills again. So the Dolphins. Let's just say the Jets beat the Dolphins once, and they lose their last 3, which would be almost unprecedented. But the Dolphins, I guess, have done that a few times. But Cowboys, Ravens, Bills. What would that put the Dolphins at? What are they? 6-3.
Yeah.
So they'd be 10-7, and the Jets would be 4-6, so they could lose 1 game. I mean,
how about scoring a touchdown? How about scoring?
All right. I just don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But all I was saying is the Jets do have the path of, if they take care of business in the division and the Dolphins lose some of those tough games they have, and maybe they lose a sneaky one to the Raiders or a sneaky one to Will Levis and the Titans and Sam Howell and the Commanders. Who knows? The wheels come off. Although, why do they have to have so many home games in December? I was really hoping they'd have some cold weather games here. But if the wheels come off for the Dolphins, the Bills just not their year, and the Jets can just keep themselves alive. Maybe they can win the AFC East. The AFC as a whole is a bloodbath. Everybody's even. 7 games would definitely do it. 7 losses, would definitely do it. 10-7, I think you're in the playoffs. 9-8, you're going to need some help. They're at 4-5 right now. So let's just say they have 2 to 3 losses left in them. And that includes 2 games against the Dolphins, 1 game against the Bills, and 1 game against the Browns, 1 game against the Texans.
What are we talking about?
All right, sorry.
I feel like you lost me a few minutes ago.
I know. I lost. Sorry, I got a little convoluted there. But just win a game. Just win a game. Season's not over, but if you lose this one, it's just hard, and it makes it not worth it to have have Rodgers come back. All right, that'll do it for us. Follow us at TYJ Pod on Twitter. Michael _Nania, myself, Ben W. Blessington. Go to jetsxfactor.com. Best place to go for Jets content. Check out the other Jets X Factor pods. Subscribe to the Jets X Factor YouTube. Please rate, review, subscribe on iTunes if you can. Michael, last thoughts. We were doing so well on the Monday, Friday schedule. Can we be honest? Part of it was
Black this week?
Yes. I think white on black this week. Part of it was the schedule. Part of it is I got bit by a radioactive spider. No, I'm just kidding. I did get – this is a spider bite. I woke up, my eye was completely swollen shut, and so I needed this whole week has been a nightmare. And so the podcast got put on the back burner a little bit, and then the traveling back from Vegas, it was going to be late anyway. But we apologize for not having the pod out on Tuesday or Monday, but we do try to stick to that Friday, Monday schedule. So we will be back on Monday. White on black this weekend. Jets get to 5-5. The season's back on. Aaron Rodgers is coming back with his robo Achilles, and the Jets are going to the playoffs. All right. Thank you everybody for listening. Have a great weekend. Go Jets.